Hi guys. Hey everyone. So welcome to the Fundamentals of Business Finance. My name's Courtney and I'm the co-founder of Jammy, which is a discount card community and a platform that champions Black-owned businesses like yourselves. And you're all here today basically because you want to take control of your business finances, and that is brilliant, and learn everything from profit and loss to cash flow to pricing, and that's exactly why we're here. So we've got expert Yemi Ajala running this session today. And this masterclass is the fifth in this series of Geared for Growth, which is a monthly masterclass series, which is all about teaching Black-owned businesses the basics of business. So if you want to find out more about Geared for Growth, sign up to the final two masterclasses and also replay all of these that have gone by. You can go to growwithjammy.com, which I think is on the screen right now. This session is being recorded and it's going to be a really good one. So you can make your notes now and catch up afterwards. We'll send you the recording in a few days' time. And there'll also be some time for Q&A at the very end. So enough from me. Take it away, Yemi.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. And today was a great day. So my name is Yemi Ajala. I'm a chartered accountant by trade, and I'm going to take you through a masterclass of the fundamentals of business finance. So let me share my screen to run through a presentation with you. Awesome. So I'm sharing my screen. If you cannot see my screen, let me know. But otherwise, I'm going to crack on. So as I mentioned, my name is Yemi Ajala. I'm the Business Development Director here at First Class Accounts. So, learning outcomes. So essentially what we want to achieve today is to give you a good understanding of pricing strategies, the different kinds of pricing strategies that you can review within your businesses or implement within your businesses. And we'll also look at and move on to the critical elements that we believe you should be considering and be aware of as part of your business financials. So we're going to be taking an in-depth look about cash flows, balance sheets, and profit and loss, and how these three big statements can now impact your decision making within your businesses. We'll also look at how you can effectively complete your financial planning and why it's important, why it's effective in order to have a financial plan. Then we'll go through expected profit margins in e-commerce or in retail, depending on your industry, and why this is all important to know, especially if you're considering to scale your business. And then we'll finalize the session today with key tips and nuggets on how you can grow financial resilience within your operations. I always say it's really important to know who is speaking to you and who you're obtaining an education from. So I'll let you know a little bit about me. My name is Yemi Ajala. I'm a chartered accountant, qualified over a decade ago, and founded First Class Accounts over a decade ago. Our business deals with talent. So we deal with a lot of SMEs, small and medium enterprises, as well as sports entertainment individuals and organizations. And some of the things that we focus on are growth within those sectors. So how people can come into us on day one and how they essentially grow their businesses or their prospects in what they do. Over the years, we've been fortunate enough to build a business that now turns over millions in annual revenue. And myself, I've now become a serial investor. So essentially building my own financial resilience is now parking some of the resources that I've essentially been blessed with into other areas to be resilient holistically. And finally, I'm a husband and a father of two wonderful, noisy kids. So all good. All right, so let's get straight into it, right? Pricing strategies. Depending on whether you are new to business, you're a startup, you're a seasoned pro, this may be an education or a review of your systems. So the first pricing strategy that is commonly used is something known as value-based pricing. So this is pricing based on what you or your potential consumers perceive your services or products to be worth. The next one is customer-based pricing, where you simply based your pricing on what customers competitors-based pricing, which is what you essentially base your prices on what your competitors are doing and using that as a benchmark. And then the final one is the most common one, which is cost plus pricing, which is essentially a price determined by what your costs are of your goods and services, and you essentially add in a margin or a markup. So we'll go through each one of them, analyzing the pros and cons, the benefits, and the potential disadvantages. So value-based pricing, this is the one where people have the perceived value. It's great for improved profit margins. Why? It's because you have the control over what you can price an element at. But the reason why this is important is because you potentially are operating within a niche, and the number of competitors that operate within that realm or a circle are quite limited. So you almost have something as close to a monopoly, and there are not many comparables in your market. So because of that, you can take advantage by pricing something at a much premium level because there are no comparables to it, or you operate in such a way that you can charge almost whatever you want. Now, that must be, or ideally backed with an elevated brand presence. So a lot of people associate a premium cost with a premium brand, from packaging, how you present yourself, language, terminology, and the central front of the business as well as operations. Value-based pricing typically offers great or greater customer experience because people have the opportunity to see exactly what is being done. And as a result of that, you have the opportunity to have the cash flow to engage in feedback, asking people, is this something that you're enjoying? Seeing the reaction of your clients or your customers and being able to improve the customer experience on each and every single occasion. And that will naturally lead into a loyal customer base where, depending on what it is you are selling or retailing, it's something that could potentially promote consistent purchasing, repeat custom, as well as a loyal customer base. But value-based pricing also has its downsides. And the downsides are it can involve a significant amount of time and effort to understand the customer value. And this is quite, sensible, because how would you be able to determine whether you can charge, for example, a chocolate bar for £50? What research, what information is available to you? How do you now distinguish yourself from all the other, for let's say, an example, chocolate bars that exist in the market? What makes you different? And to be able to understand or to tap into the psyche of your consumers and your customers, this requires an in-depth amount of knowledge and time, and it's something that you need to plug in a lot of research into. Another disadvantage is being able to determine the right level of price. Now, where again you have comparables or people have a sense of understanding of how you compare certain things to others, they will now have an understanding of this is either too expensive or it's fair or whatever it is. So people can use other metrics and things around them, essentially analyzing things like necessities and luxuries and being able to determine what the right level of price is for whatever it is that you're selling. Another one is the increased competition. So the reason why this is massive is because nothing stays a secret for a long time. And when people identify a gap or a niche, it continues to experience over time a flood of new entrants into that market. So unless you, within your business and your offering, solidify your position in terms of what it is you're able to do, it can promote an increased competition with what you do. So this is why operating with a niche immediately may eventually turn into a mass if you don't establish yourself with a high brand, great customer loyalty, as we mentioned and discussed before. And then naturally, because you are delivering ultimately a higher quality of item, the production costs associated may be higher. You may, for example, with apparel, choose the highest level of quality in terms of what you how you source your materials. And this is something that one needs to take into consideration. Moving on to competitor-based pricing, right? The great thing about this is that it's very easy to implement and to use because you have a set market, a set benchmark in terms of what someone is similar to what you're offering is offering, and you just price in accordance with them, right? So there are things in which you can do that you can just replicate the same price. In terms of risks, it's been known that the risks are low, but I will get on to why that may not always be the case with the cons. But generally, when one prices their goods and services at the same as their competitors, generally it tends to have low risk because it's a proven model, they say. The model of competitor-based pricing is one that is cost effective and time effective, i.e., it doesn't take too long to implement such a price. You engage a very small amount of interest, find out what your competitors are pricing, and price your offerings in the same way. And the great thing about this is, with the other strategies being mentioned, it can be used in collaboration or with these other techniques as well. Now, moving on to the downsides of it is where this can be inaccurate, this is what I was alluding to before, where just because you price something in accordance with how your competitors price it, you may not have any intel in terms of their margins, the economies of scales that they are taking advantage of, i.e., do they buy in bulk? What minimum order quantities are they offering? What is their unit cost price versus yours? There are loads of things that you may not be privy to and that you should be taking into consideration within your pricing. Another downside is that it doesn't take into consideration the customer. There is very minimal interaction with your customer when setting your prices based on your competitors. Whereas what some people tend to do is engage in some sort of research initially to have an understanding of what their customers and their consumers are potentially willing to pay in terms of price. There is also the fact that you can lose potential profits, meaning if you are charging something very close to your competitors, but your offering is genuinely better and a more superior quality, there's a chance that you're not maximizing that you're not taking advantage of the maximum amounts that you can be charging for your offerings. And as a result, it means that there are profits that are being left on the table and not being achieved. And the downside is a lot of people are very dependent on what it is you're offering, right? Especially when we look at the wants versus the needs, the luxuries versus the necessities. Where one is priced exactly the same as their competitor, it now becomes a bigger argument in terms of how do you stand out? It's just another variable that people can be blind to, and consumers and customers can look deeper in terms of your offerings and how you are different, right? The next one is the most common one, cost plus pricing. And this is where simply people have an understanding of their costs and they add a margin, whether a percentage or a fixed amount, and then they price according to that. The reason why this is so common is because it's extremely easy to calculate. It's very easy to calculate all of your costs, both your fixed and variable costs, both your shared cost and the individual cost in order to derive at that service or product. It's also clearly sustainable. What do I mean by this? Sustainability in terms of how your business can potentially survive. And some say, so far as your costs are met, your business is surviving, provided people are coming in through the door. And the only thing to consider in terms of how profitable you are is the margin that you're deciding to charge on top of your costs. Now, in terms of understanding pricing, in terms of understanding evaluating and explaining these items to customers in terms of potential price hikes, everyone has an understanding of when things go up. So over the last 3 years, I would say, a lot of things go up. People may have experienced price increases with phone providers, with food and whatever it may be. But it's easier for the consumer and the customer to comprehend this because generally there's been a price increase as a result of a cost increase across the board. Variables such as Brexit, elections, and all of these other things, right? But the great thing about this is that it's a very straightforward way to test new products and new markets. Because as long as you understand the cost associated with launching a new product or launching within a new market, all you need to essentially do is monitor the cost. And some people decide to take a break-even method, which is not taking into consideration a margin and just essentially covering their costs. However, there are always downsides to things. And the downside to cost plus pricing is that it can be difficult to implement across different products or services and monitor different margins. As you naturally may have, there are some products and services that in your offering that may be considerably more profitable than others. But because of the element of shared expenses could be an office premises, it could be a staff member that you're utilizing across various different industries. It's very difficult to now ascertain the new product or the new market, how profitable this may be or how to price this when you have shared expenses. Another massive one, and one that I've even currently suffered from, is the missed opportunity of revenue. Now, there are some markets and there are some industries that one can operate within where the cost element and focusing on the cost shouldn't be the main focus. It should be, what am I offering? What is the value of my proposition? And how is it priced? Who is operating in the same way in which I can deliver? And not just being limited by your cost factor, but doing even more. So that is a massive one. And that's where a lot of people are not maximizing or utilizing their full potential, right? And this is where we now move into, it doesn't reflect the true value of the product or service. There's something that you could be offering that is so great, significantly substantial to all of your competitors, but because your focus is to emphasize on the cost element, it doesn't take you to the next level of being able to charge a premium that your service or product offers and demands. And again, it doesn't offer a true reflection on the market value and what the market conditions are currently. Because there may be some people that, depending on whatever may be happening, may have certain demands, but you focusing on the cost element doesn't take into consideration seasonalities in markets and the year of how you trade in your business specifically. Now, moving through the crucial elements of business finance and cash flow statements. Some of these documents you may have come across in your business life, in your studies, or in conversation. But essentially what I'm going to do with these 3 documents is to provide an education in terms of things that you should be looking for and why these documents are useful depending on the stage of your business. The first is a cash flow statement. A cash flow statement is a financial report which summarizes the company's cash flows in and out. So it doesn't necessarily look at the profit element, which I'll come on to within a profit and loss that may have an impact on your taxes, but it's simply what comes in and what goes out and the management of cash. It's a tool to use for managing finances, forecasting cash, and making short-term plans. The cash flow statement is usually broken down into 3 sections. There is your operating activity, which covers all of the day-to-day business activities, such as your sales, your marketing, your manufacturing. There is also the investment activity, which looks at the long-term cash usage, looks at the buying and selling of property or equipment as well, so heavier cash demands. And then the financing activities. This is very much to do with your stakeholders. So this is very much the people that you may be accountable to, including yourself, i.e. the owners of the business, the creditors, i.e. people you owe money to, and cash between some of the people that you have dealings with. So that's a very important one. So being practical, because I love being practical, I'm going to take you through a cash flow forecast. So this is a cash flow statement. I hope you can all see my screen. So now, let me make it a little bit bigger. 1 second. So, cool. So you should all be able to see a cash summary on my screen. So essentially, it only deals with the inflows and the outflows. So what you will commonly see is all inflows from various different sections, cost lines, bank interest, revenues, refund, anything that essentially comes from your trading activity. And then you have your expenditure. So anything that essentially goes out, which may be business related. Now, rather than deriving at a profit, you will either arrive at a surplus or a deficit. Ultimately, do you have a positive cash flow or a negative cash flow? Ultimately, are you spending more money? Are there more outflows or are there more inflows, right? The acquisition of assets, the purchasing of assets will also be an outflow. And for those who are within the VAT realm, so your annual turnovers are in excess of £90,000 within a 12-month period, if you're VAT registered, there will need to be the movement of your VAT, both ones that you've collected and ones that you have paid. And then the net position, the net cash movement position will show you whether it is positive or negative. Ultimately, whether you are in a position where you are receiving more money through sales and other means, or you are spending more money through expenditure, acquisitions, and VAT. So a very, very important thing to consider. Cash is known to be the bloodline of a business. If there is no cash, there is no ability to meet long, short, medium-term opportunities or pressures, then that's where a lot of people experience the unfortunate situation of having to close a business because there's no cash. Credit lines are another thing to take into consideration. That may be an injection of cash, taking out a loan, injecting it into the business, but it's very important generally to consider how that loan is going to be spent, because as you can really see, money will be spent. It's whether it's going to be invested or spent. Excellent. Moving on to the next one, a balance sheet. Balance sheets are not typically spoken about because they are known as statement of financial positions. A balance sheet normally happens in accordance with the financial period end of your business, and it essentially looks at what you own versus what you owe. If you may have heard of the term or the phrase a top-heavy balance sheet, that is because a lot of people want to show a higher level of assets versus the liabilities, i.e. the amounts that they owe. Because a positive balance sheet is what improves the credit profile of businesses, i.e. strengthening the ability for you to take out cars on finance, getting funding, applying for loans, or seeking investment. These are all great things to take into consideration. So as mentioned, the balance sheet looks at three main areas. It looks at the assets, i.e. the items that you own, cash, accounts receivables, people who owe you money, as well as stock and inventories. Then what you owe, liabilities. This is short-term cash that you may owe to creditors, credit lines, taxes, loads of things that you can potentially owe money for. And then the owner's equity. This is amounts that could be built up over previous years or the current year, i.e. if you have generated a profit and you have a reserve, then that will be considered to be owner's equity, in which they have the option at a later point to withdraw a dividend, i.e. a bonus from the equity that exists within a business, right? Again, being practical, I'll show you a live example of a balance sheet. And you can see the comparison between the 2 years and how so many things can happen within that time. Where in March 24, for example, there was no acquisition of any assets, but then someone has, or the company has purchased an asset and it has been depreciated, i.e. the value of that asset is being diminished over its useful life. It's just essentially reducing over its time, its life. And what we have with a top-heavy balance sheet is where we have the total assets to be greater than the liabilities, i.e. the amounts that we own to be more than the amounts that we owe. And we can owe money for various different things, right? Now, a positive balance sheet is what we have here. This is an example of a positive balance sheet in 2025. And then in 2024, this is an example of a negative balance sheet. So a situation like this can be very difficult for an organization to apply for funding, car finance, leases, whatever it is, because of the sheer fact of collateral. If you were to take out a credit line, or someone were to take out a credit line, this doesn't install investor confidence or lending confidence. And what they will now turn around, the institution will turn around and say is, where is the position of where we can almost guarantee the money? that we will get back, or for your ability to service the loan or to service the lease agreement. So these are things to take into consideration as well. Now, the final document is the profit and loss. So with the profit and loss, it's a document that essentially analyzes the trading activities of the business. So it goes through how much money has come in through sales and its activities versus how much money has been spent in order to generate the sales from those services and activities. And what we want to do is we want to consider a positive correlation between the money you spend and the money that is generated from what you spend. There shouldn't be, and this is a general point, there shouldn't be a consistent flow of spending money in the wrong areas that do not generate money. So when we speak to our clients, we always like to say, with the first amount of money you get, which I'll go into later, you reinvest in your stars and you get rid of your dogs. So if you know your business is one that's labor heavy, your best investment is investing in staff rather than ad campaigns and all these kind of things, because there's a track record of the more hands you have, the more you are able to generate in terms of income. So it's understanding the correlation of how your business operates, right? Now, a profit and loss is a fantastic document snapshot for many stakeholders, such as investors, creditors, and management, people who make the decisions in the business, because they're able to use the document to assess how profitable the company is. They measure gross profit margin, net profit margin. They measure how you're able to price. Is the pricing model that you have profitable or is it not? What's the margin like? Resources of the allocation of your resources ultimately. Again, do you spend more money within staffing, advertising, rent, premises, all these kind of things. It's also the document to use to report taxes. If you're operating as a limited company, you will pay corporation tax, which can start from 19%, but can be as high as 25%, depending on the level of profit. And it's also the document used in order to attract investment. Some investors don't necessarily need to understand your business, but invest in companies that have a good track record of being profitable. And they essentially just want to take a piece of that, because if the company is profitable, it means that there's a higher chance of that investor receiving a dividend, right? Which is essentially a bonus payment. Awesome. So the last demonstration is a profit and loss that you can see. It looks very similar to that of the cash summary, where you, at the top, you see your revenue, i.e. the amounts that come in, and then the cost of sales. The cost of sales are known to be the direct costs in relation to generating that income. So this will be the purchasing of any fabrics if you're an apparel company. It's the direct cost associated with generating that revenue. Then below we have all the administrative costs. This will be the shared cost. This will be the cost that help run the business as a whole, as opposed to directly in relation to each product line services. It's the bringing together of the business and what is spent, right? So this is something to be mindful of. And then at the end, you will derive at a profit, hopefully. And then if there is a profit, the chances are you will pay tax. So some may turn around and say, paying tax is not necessarily a bad thing. And the reason why that may not be a bad thing is because of the privilege of how you can leverage off your position. Remember, as I mentioned, profitable businesses are attracted to investors. So if the end goal is to attract investments, i.e. an injection of cash for your cash flow, which will enable you to focus on the allocation of your resources, putting it in places that can generate even more revenue, it's not necessarily a problem. It's a game that works. The key why people generally don't like paying taxes because they don't have a good understanding of how they can leverage off that position of being a profitable company. But once you're able to understand that, you'll be flying, right? Excellent. Now, let's move on. And let's move on to some of the things that we need to highlight: effectiveness and importance of certain things. Now, I'm going to make an assessment and an assumption, I should say, of the majority of people on this call. And in the Q&A, we can go into it in much greater detail. There may be some things that are hitting home or topics that you may think of as I'm going through these things. If you do have them, please feel free to write them into the chat, make a note, and we'll go through them in the Q&A session in approximately 15 minutes time. Now, how to effectively complete or do a financial plan and why a financial plan is effective. So I'm going to make the assumption that everyone is in their business as a full-time, as their full-time gig. It's your full-time thing, right? So you're not doing any part-time jobs, just for ease. Now, with how you create a financial plan and even within your pricing, the first thing you must consider is how you pay yourself. The majority of businesses that I come across and all of the clients that we serve, we encourage them to take into consideration the element of how they will pay themselves, even if they don't pay themselves. The easiest way to do this is consider your time as a cost. So a lot of the clients that we have and people that we come across when consulting is they typically go for the cost plus because it's the easiest way in order to price. But as part of your cost, put a price on your time. How does someone decide how to put a price on their time? They have a good understanding of how much they need to survive in their own personal lives. So they will have an understanding of what their rent is, how much they spend on food, travel, subscriptions, whatever it may be. And that should be factored in to your pricing. There should be forecast, there should be an understanding of your minimum number of units that you want to sell in order to achieve that. You should always be optimistic and be pessimistic at the same time and take a view of both. But the element of being able to pay yourself is extremely important because times are hard, they get tough, but you want to make sure that it's not tougher when you or someone is unable to pay for bills or they fall into arrears or whatever it may be. Let's get the necessities out of the way. And then once you do that, have clear company goals. The goals may be financial or non-financial. It very much depends on the business, industry, markets in which you operate in, and the age of your business as well. Don't go shooting for stars. Celebrate milestones. The reason why celebrating milestones and small milestones are really important is because every single business owner I've ever spoken to has always gone through that process or that time where they feel a little bit low and they look back and reflect and they don't feel that they've achieved enough. But you should celebrate milestones. Something my wife and I decided to do a few years ago was, as some people do their planning, we did some planning, but we decided to make it fun. So we wrote our goals on bottles of champagne. So once we received the goal, we popped the champagne bottle. We don't drink, but we just decided to pop the champagne bottle. And we celebrate these milestones because it's very important to have these moments where you can track back and say, okay, that got done in 2024. That got achieved in 2023. So have clear goals, both for the company and personally. And be sensible with your cash flow management, right? Don't go, again, shooting for the stars. Don't be too tight with your tax provisions and only say 5% when you know the tax percentage is 19%. Round it up to 20%. Why? What's the worst that happens? You pay your tax bill, you have money left over. It goes reallocated into helping a business, So be sensible, be realistic with your cash flow management. And as it nicely leads me into the smart budget allocation, have pots with purposes. Sometimes when people are just saving, they don't have a purpose or a reason as to what they're saving for. Life happens. You just say, what am I saving for? You don't know what you're saving for. Money gets blown. But have pots with a purpose. Banking has evolved. It's changed where you can even change the name of accounts. You can name pots. You can do so many different things. Be very clear with how you do some things and make the decision-making around your financial planning easy. Don't make it too difficult where everything needs to be calculated. Just have rough percentages. Money comes in, I'm going to have 5 pots, 20% in each pot. Make life easy for yourself, right? So that would be some advice that I would give in terms of how to effectively plan. As well as that,
there's 10 minutes left.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. As well as that, there is also the necessary costs you need to reduce. Again, this is where you need to focus on your necessities and not your luxuries, especially when you're building your business, which I'll get onto in terms of how to scale. Don't take on excessive amount of risk. Again, realize your business, understand your business, figure out what's working well, invest in your stars, get rid of your dogs. Crisis management, life happens. Build within your pots and your planning an emergency fund. And then when you're trying to raise cash, it shouldn't just spike. It should be a smooth fundraising. That can come internally, that can come by crowdfunding, or if your accounts are producing great reports, investments, right? And there are ways in which you can do it. If you're a small startup, there are ways in which you can incentivize your investors by EIS schemes or seed EIS schemes. There's loads of things you can do. But all of these things are easy when they're visual. So having a growth map, some sort of mood board in terms of where you want to be is awesome to have as well. Try and be as visual if that's the kind of way you're inclined. Now, in terms of margins, every single company and industry is different. Here are some examples of some businesses and what they tend to arrive at their profit margins. Some of them have even surprised me and they're quite low. Restaurants, for example, was extremely low. I would have thought that someone, Krispy Kreme, for example, I would have thought they're making at least a 200% margin. But again, every single thing is different because the cost that they have, we may not be privy to. And that's the reason why understanding your cost as an industry is very important and using that as a benchmark. No one says you need to stay within that box, but using it as a benchmark to not go beneath. Now, with that, again, in order to arrive at the right profit margins, you need to understand your competitors' margins. Are you charging too little? Are you charging too much? Because charging too much may be the reason why the phones are not ringing or the emails are not coming through as consistently. You need to understand whether you're a high ticket item or you're a business that concentrates on a lot of volume. You should consider brand strength as well. Where are you positioned in the market? Don't fool yourself. Are you in a position where you're in beauty and you're comparing yourself against Palmers who have been around for the test of time? Be sensible, create a good story, a good brand image. Consider the location as well. Hair and beauty is massive in America, and it's big in the UK, but not as big, right? So consider where you want to locate yourself. There's a lot of companies, especially clients that we have, who are domiciled in the UK, been born and raised here, but the idea that they're serving is better suited in America. So they've set up shop in America. So don't be limited to that factor. And consider peaks and seasons as well. What I mean by this is it's not all the year round that your business may be popping. So farmers, turkey farmers, for example, will know that leading up to Christmas is their time to shine. And ice cream vendors and suppliers and vans in the summer, that's where they are able to charge a higher margin because that's where the demand is. But with this, always use comparable metrics and scenarios to understand how you can derive at the best profit margins within your business. Scaling is extremely important, but not every single company wants to scale. I must say this. There was a situation with a client where, again, we believe in SME growth. So I sat down with her as a onboarding and I said, look, we can build this business. It's a massive business. You can get someone in, they can run the clinic for you. You can go and sell the merchandise. She turned around and said, I don't want a big business. I want a business that could substitute the salary I was getting in the corporate world. Because some people understand that peace of mind is its own currency. And as a result, they know exactly what they want. So scaling a business is important for those who understand what it takes to scale a business. Not every single person has the ability to deal with a 250 employee business, a company that generates 50 million a year. Some things, they outlast us, they outdo us in terms of our own capabilities. So it's very important to understand where you want to take your business. So be mindful of that, right? A good nugget to give you when you decide to start taking on business employees within your business and personnel is revenue per person. The reason why this is important to consider is because every single business is different. There are examples of, like, they call it the factory, where you have long amount of people, so many people within a business, but your margin is so thin because you're doing volume, you're just batch producing because you need that. But then there are lifestyle boutique businesses where, like social media agencies, for example, you maybe have 3 different people, but then they're doing millions. And the revenue per person, i.e., if they're generating £1 million, they have 2 people, their revenue per person is 500,000 per person. This is a metrics to use in terms of efficiency of your workforce and people that are there. Even if you don't have people on payroll and you have freelancers for the flexibility of it, the people that you consider to be full-time, 40 hours plus, or if they're doing 20 hours, you can consider them to be half an employee. This is a very important metrics to ensure effectiveness around your work staff. And personally, I will always encourage for you to take time out of your schedule rather than always working within the business, work on the business. So take time out to not deal with clients, not deal with customer orders, not deal with people, and work on how you are growing your business. How can you implement services? Engage in research, speak to clients. You know, we have a system in our business where we just have someone who just calls our clients all day. How is it going? Not here to talk to you about accounts. How are you doing? You okay? It's not going so well. Don't worry, I'm going to get this person to call you. Or you're doing well, whatever it is. Because it's those people who would keep your business going. And sometimes the best growth within business is not always attracting new customers, but to preserve the ones that you already have. Because when you have a process of keeping people and clientele, these are people that will stay with you for years to come. So always consider that. And with your offerings, always consider who are your offerings for. You may not be the best customer for your business. And the reason why that's important to consider is because your offering may be better suited to someone who you can provide a need for, and it may not be you. So have a good understanding of who you are serving. Tailor your offerings to eradicate a problem, to address a problem that genuinely exists. So that's something to consider. And as I always said, and I've given you examples, research is key. You must continue to research. You must be speaking with people. You must be in a position where you're just always finding out new things as much as you can, right? And this is what takes me to the last slide before inviting your questions, is how to build financial resilience. Now, typically, some people may turn around and say, be profitable, and it all may be monetary aligned, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's all about being excellent at what you're delivering and doing things with a degree of excellence. Because if you continue to offer something fabulous that defeats someone having to do something, then ultimately the money will automatically come. Quick example. I remember when my first child was being born and me and my wife, we both work, we would consider what we're going to do if we're both working, who's going to look after the kids before they go into nursery. And we spoke to a nanny, and rather than the nanny saying, here's my rate, they were trying to understand our problem. And it wasn't just the rates and when they will be coming in. They designed such a package to say you both work during the day, you'll probably need rest during the night, as well as support within the day. So they built a service around our needs. And it took away the element of price. And we were just focusing on how the solution was being dealt with. And it now becomes inelastic in terms of, to a degree, of how much they can charge and how we value that solution to be in accordance with the rate. So always think about your offerings, right? Reinvest in your business, right? Reinvest in your business. Don't suffocate the business. Don't always say, I've got enough money to go and buy my house now. Sometimes it may not be the thing, right? Not disencouraging anyone to buy a property. I think it's an amazing thing to do. But sometimes reinvesting that money that you take out as your deposit to go and buy the home, who knows that can be the money that can 10x your next level. You just do one campaign, you're through the roof. So always be encouraged to reinvest in your business and leverage off other people's time. Be a visionary, remain as a visionary. To other people, it will be a job, but this is your baby. So be a visionary to take and propel your business to the next level. Use smart networks, speak to the right people, speak to like-minded people, get a mentor, always look at people who have walked where you want to walk. LinkedIn is massive. Search by job title, search by industry, and just say, look, I think what you've done is amazing. Shower them with praise. I just want to shadow you. And then that's where you will now be able to emulate that. And the last one is empower yourself to go beyond your industry and your business, as well as your market. The money will come, right? Just focus on delivering the best you can. Serve your customers, serve your clients, right? Jamie Oliver is a fantastic example. He served people. He wanted people to be able to have access to good food. So empower yourself beyond your industry, beyond your market, beyond your business, and you will excel. The money will come. It's guaranteed. Any questions?
This was such a good session. Thank you so much, Yemi. Guys, feel free to start putting your questions into the chat because we have about 15 minutes of Q&A now. Yeah, I found that so interesting. It was the part about the financial planning and the cost structures that I found really, really valuable. I have a couple of questions myself. So you talked about the different types of pricing structures, and I wondered how often should you review your pricing structure? Maybe if things are even going well, should you keep reviewing your pricing structure as you go?
I think so, yeah. And I think it depends on one's business. You know, all fashion companies, well, that we serve, they review their pricing structure at least twice a year. You know, spring, summer, and then the other one, autumn, winter. And they just review it because cost of materials go up for those that are affected by the cost plus. Some people, they may realize that they've done a massive campaign, and as a result, they can now move into more the premium end. So it depends on your business, what you're doing and your offering, but there's no harm in reviewing your pricing as frequently as you wish. But to do it well, it's a big activity because there are a lot of things that you need to take into consideration. And your finances, those 3 documents I went through, they're really important to review as part of that to see where you're going and tracking your trends, even on a monthly basis.
Okay, cool. That's really interesting. And my other question is, so you've kind of gone through the stuff that we can do as business owners, but what's something, for example, tax returns that we should kind of not touch and leave to an accountant?
Fantastic question. Anyone that has a limited company, don't try and do it yourself. I would say do you know, when I speak to people about becoming clients of First Class, it just depends on what they want. People need an accountant for certain things. If you need an accountant for compliance, i.e., I just want to stay on board with Companies House, I just want to stay on board with HMRC, sometimes going for not the cheapest, but a mid-range option is fine. Avoid companies and accountants in London because they'll always charge you a premium. And look outside, look at some other regions if for compliance, because there's no value that they can add. But where you start getting to a place where you consider an accountant as an investment as opposed to a cost, what you should consider are things of them becoming a strategic partner. How can they influence your operations? What experience do they have? Are they familiar within that field? So we deal with sports and entertainment, and we deal with SMEs. We deal with SME growth. So people that can do 10 million this year, then 20 million the next year, whatever it may be. We have evidence of growth. And there may be industry specific accountants. So in short, look for what it is you're looking for, compliance or value add. And if it's value add, ask the question, don't be afraid. Say, how can you help me? What experience do you have working with my kind that can show me what I've done? Show me some case studies.
Okay, wonderful. Deborah has asked, what are the pros and cons of operating as a sole trader versus a limited company?
It potentially taxes, because sole traders, everyone can potentially earn as an individual 12,500 tax free. So sole traders have that because they trade as themselves. But then after that first 12.5 grand, up to 50,000, they get taxed at 20%. Beyond 20%, it starts getting ridiculous and goes to 40%. The moment they earn over 100,000, their personal allowance, i.e., that first 12,500, begins to taper away. So anyone that earns over 125,000 as profit as a sole trader, the tax-free allowance is gone. The difference with a limited company is that the tax-free allowance that I discussed, one can potentially use that by employing themselves within a business, so they don't miss out on that. But the benefit of a limited company is that at that first level, 50K is 19%. So from the off, you save a percentage. The most important thing is the expenses and the spectrum of expenses that you can claim. HMRC have now launched this massive thing called duality of purpose. Sorry for the terminology, but this is where essentially they find it so difficult for someone to be Deborah and then Deborah as a sole trader. When you have a phone bill, you have the same phone bill, but you want to put 50% of the cost through. How can you say 50% is justifiable as a business expense? So HMRC are really hammering down on people. Whereas a limited company is a separate entity. You can say Deborah Limited and Deborah are two different people. So putting expense through Deborah Limited is completely different. And that's the reason why a lot of people do it.
I see. Thank you for that. DJ has said, I have a fashion and apparel business. Do I need to choose one pricing strategy to be effective? I tend to choose different strategies on my items, or is that ineffective?
No, different strategies are fine. On one of the previous slides, I mentioned value based pricing, and that is great because you can use different strategies in accordance with value based pricing. As part of your lines, there may be some things that you launch to be directly competitive with someone. So Balenciaga are fantastic at this. Who else are great at it as well? Balenciaga and Aliko Dangote as well in Nigeria. They launch products and services to directly compete with people, and they have so much of a monopoly in that area that they force them out of that line and that business, and they now take the entire market or that service provider. So depending on your offerings, market, and what you're doing, it's very sensible to be robust and have different pricing structures across the board. There may be some things that are loss leaders. Loss leader is something that you give that doesn't cost you a lot, but gets people in through the door. So you might turn around and say, here's a guide of how to style yourself in 30 seconds. It costs 99p. It probably costs you £2 to produce it in terms of your time, but just to get people in through the door, to get the data, 99p, loss leader.
That's really useful. Thank you. I hope that answered your question. Grace has asked, what percentage markup do you recommend charging to retailers?
That's a tough one. It depends so much on industry. It depends so much on offerings. It depends on volume as well, because I don't know what your business is, Grace, but if Tesco, for example, came to you and said, look, we can take 500 units off you, but we want it for £5 per unit, or we can take 50,000 units off you, but we want it for £1. You have to be able to understand that even within that pound, because of the volume, you still remain profitable. Or you have to knock back Tesco and say, yes, it's fantastic. I know I'll be on all of your shelves, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be a profitable venture for me. So you need to understand your pricing, your margins, and what your industry entails. But most retailers will try and squeeze people. It's a known fact. Retailers try to squeeze people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope that answered your question, Grace. Luciana says, great session. Thank you. DJ also said, thank you so much. A very good session. Ash has asked, Ash also said, a very helpful session. She's asked when the recording will become available. It should become available by Friday. Yeah, we'll send you the recording by the end of the week. Grace has just got back to say she's got a homeware business. So when do you recommend discussing pricing? So this be in the product catalog or to discuss at a later date?
Ooh. You know what you can be, if you've got a deck, maybe on the last page, a clever way to do it is you can have like an MOQ page. So you can say our minimum order quantity is 50 and our rate price starts from £5. I'm just throwing numbers, yeah? And then you can have your next grade of MOQ, next grade of MOQ, and the rates. But the amounts you put there have a significant margin, giving you so much room and for the retailers, which we know they will do to try and squeeze you. But the reason why you leave it last is because you let them fall in love with all the pages previously. They love everything to do with the homeware. They love the story. They love you. And people love seeing people behind brands now. And they fall in love with your story. They fall in love with the identity. Then you now say, this is the price. And you always use from. Why? It's suggestive that things can move. It can change. And you always want to be open to a conversation. You always want to be able to sit across the table from somebody.
That's a good answer. I like that. I hope you found that useful, Grace. Deborah says, when it comes to paying yourself, what is the most effective way to do this as a limited company?
Salary, and align your salary to the 12,500. It's actually £12,570, which works out to be £1,047.50 salary. Yes, some people may scream and say, I can't do anything on £1,000. No stress. Then you top up with a dividend. You top up with a dividend, and you only recommend it should take money that you need personally. Depending on how you operate for your business and the nature of your business, you should now look at what items you can implement as a business expense. So a phone bill is a great one. So regardless of what you do, people need phones to operate. So a phone bill is a great one to incorporate as a business expense. Travel is also a great one for business travel. Food for when you're traveling and eating for business purposes. And just looking at what you pay for in order to engage in business. There must be a correlation. If I am going to London to meet a client and I'm going to be there, or I'm going to a training session, the training session, the train ticket, the lunch I'm going to have, potentially the clothes I'm going to wear are all items that can be potentially claimed through the business.
That's really useful. Thank you. I hope that helps. Thanks, guys. We have a few more minutes left for Q&A. So if you want to drop your questions in the chat, then do go for it. In the meantime, I'm just going to share my screen because we are compiling a report, a survey based on your experiences with these masterclasses. And so we'd really love to know how you found this masterclass, how you found past ones as well. So get your phone out and scan the QR code and fill in the super short feedback survey just to give us an idea of what you thought, how we're doing, and how you'd like us to improve in any way. This is really useful because we basically are trying to find out how we can help Black-owned businesses as good as we can, how we can really get you the knowledge and the support and the resources that you are looking for and that you deserve. So yeah, just scan the QR code and give us your feedback in the meantime. I think we have a couple more questions. Yeah, it's just in the meantime, Dan has said, I run a landscaping company and generally feel my pricing structures are competitor based and cost pricing, but I feel like I'm losing out on value because the quality of my work is very good and at times feel like I'm underpriced because of this. What do you advise to get more of a balance across the three structures?
Very good. I think when pitching, it has to be beyond the price, because landscaping and generally with contractors, it can be very competitive and people are very price conscious there. But I feel that price has to be taken out of the equation when someone's tendering for a contract or considering you. And it has to be things like efficiency, how tidy you are, because landscaping can be expensive, reliability, and how on the money you are in terms of delivering. And I think that just needs to come through. But you must emulate across all your businesses, you must emulate a culture of reviews and referrals. Double R, massive. Till this day, over a decade we've been in business, 98% of our business comes through referrals. We haven't done any advertising campaign. We haven't seen us on any TV screen, nothing like that. Referrals and reviews. Be strong with your reviews. Half of the job is done when someone can read and see that these guys, I can vouch for them. They've done an excellent service for me. And your market of reviews is excellent, because when you incentivize, particularly people with referrals, then they're getting paid for telling someone that how brilliant you are. They're already satisfied with who you are, but you're incentivizing them with some sort of cash. That's when your business starts to propel.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. I hope that helps, Dan. Yeah, reviews and referrals, exactly. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I've just seen your message, Winnie, about the QR code. We will follow up with the URL when we share the recording. So in the next couple of days or so, I'll send you the recording and yeah, also the link to share your feedback. But thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who's filled in the QR code already, the survey already. And thank you everyone who's joined the session. It's been a really, really good one. So thank you to Yemi as well. Yemi, how can we get in touch with you? I'm
It's
gonna,
just,
if you want to share your screen again, I'll stop my share.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's essentially just to look at these details here. These are our socials, our email, and the office number as well. So I'll let everyone take an opportunity to take a picture of that. If you need any information from us, then please feel free to reach out. Always happy to help.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, guys, take a picture of that. Make sure to drop Yemi an email if you ever need his services, if you have any questions. But yeah, everyone's saying thank you. Great session. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been brilliant. So yeah, in the next few days, we'll follow up with the recording and the URL to share your feedback. But thanks so much, guys, and enjoy your evening. Thank you, Yemi, as well.
Anytime. Pleasure. Thank you
Take
so
care,
much, Anna.
everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Cheers. Bye.